I'm sure most of you have not played Battlefield 3, or probably played Battlefield at all, although I am sure you've witnessed a comments nuclear war over which game is better, which is a childish fight that takes place on every level of maturity with those involved, from 10-year-old players all the way up to 30 and 40-year-old developers of the games themselves. Though granted, the developers don't have their fights in comment sections of videos, they do it through public statements in Game Informer news articles, things like that. Now, a capitalist will tell you that Call of Duty is better because it sells better. And an idealist will tell you that Battlefield 3 is better because it so obviously has more work put into it, not to mention dedicated servers. Well, I am here today to settle this argument once and for all. Through reasoned argument and careful analysis of a plethora of statistics, I have reached an irrefutable conclusion as to which game deserves your money. If you want the answer immediately, skip to the end, because before I make the call, I do want to lay out the analysis behind it. Previously, I'd been one of those guys that basically said neither game was better, they were just for different kinds of people. Call of Duty, based around the idea that everyone in our modern age is born with a severe case of ADHD, along with the natural super violent tendencies that have dominated our instincts and emotions for as long as man has existed. And they may very well be correct, for they've essentially given us armed conflict as a sport, where we can play as kung fu ninjas who have snorted way too much cocaine, probably throw in some PCP as well, and we are now willing and able to jump shot, trick shot, quick scope, no scope, dolphin dive, spray and pray, and throw knives at one another, or combat axes, or tomahawks, in the midst of hotly contested and super relevant locations, such as carnivals and really, really cool houses where I wish I lived. And we as a species have bought into it with relish and delight, every year setting new records for how simplistic and sensationalist we truly are. And I speak to you now, not as one who frowns upon this trend, but as one who takes part in it annually. Battlefield is based around the idea that we want a more realistic experience, that human beings do not simply cling to the amount of violence, but to the quality of said violence. And although Battlefield is still far from reality, keep in mind, in reality, gunfights last hours at a time and generally at extreme distances, usually with only a couple casualties, if any at all. Real-life combat is like a giant 3-hour match of search and destroy where 2 kills at the end would be a lot. And I mean, I'm just going off what I've been told by family members in the military, conversations I've had here on the internet, and a couple of pretty intense videos here on YouTube, actually. But I don't want anyone mistaking that I'm in the military. I see people do that kind of shit on Call of Duty, like pretend they're hardcore Army Rangers in real life, talk about getting kills in real life when it's fairly obvious their balls haven't even dropped yet, and that ticks me off. That's not alright. I did get called by a Marine recruiter once, who called everyone on my high school football team, and he was doing a really good job of recruiting me, actually. I was getting into it, and he was making the Marines sound like a great time, which is hard. And I was getting into it, and I let it out that I have asthma, and like literally he almost hung up on me. So that's, whatever. That's how that ended. I think good representations of real-life gunfights are movies like Jarhead or The Hurt Locker, whereas Battlefield is a lot like the movie Black Hawk Down, if you've seen it. And granted, that movie is based on true events, but it's like one rare instance in all of modern combat. But I digress. Battlefield's games, their excitement comes from the quality of the violence, whereas Call of Duty is about the quantity. You can be in a situation where you're basically doing nothing, you're pinned down in a building or something, but the sound from actual war tapes combined with your headset and the vibrations of your controller and the screams of the little kids online, it makes for its own experience. Your heart's beating and you're searching for a way out of the building before it collapses, which is going to happen soon because chunks of the ceiling are hitting in your face, and the building to your right has already collapsed and your friend is dead in the ground, and there's a tank outside and it's blowing chunks through the walls, and you're trying to get out, but there's guys pinned down on the stairs and you're trapped and you don't know what to do. Those are the kind of experiences that make Battlefield great. And so as somebody who has played both games quite a bit, and has played both games' many predecessors quite a bit, I can tell you which to buy. However, that answer depends on the console you own. Battlefield fails on the console. Alright? For a simple reason. The Battlefield maps are designed for 32 on 32 64-man lobbies. They are gigantic, but on the console you are capped at 12v12. Now if you do the ratios, that'd be like playing a 3v3 ground war on Turbine in Call of Duty every match. Alright, it wouldn't be very fun. So it just has an incredibly nerfed game pace to begin with, and you put that in combination with the fact that Battlefield has a much more advanced learning curve, which means people are going to be, there's going to be way more people who don't know what they're doing. You combine that with the fact that a year and a half into the game, the playlist population is super low. You basically have a majority of matches where the game is essentially broken, where very little happens. You spend 15 minutes running around the map looking for an enemy, maybe 5 minutes actually fighting. You get sniped in the back. Matches where in the post-game lobby you feel ripped off. I remember the last match of Battlefield I played was on the console. The last match of Battlefield I played that was on the console, I've played on the PC since then, was on Operation Metro, which is supposed to be the one fast-paced map. It's supposed to be the most one of the more fast-paced maps, if not the most fast-paced map, which is why it was the only map they released in the beta. And notice how they didn't put Caspian Border in the console beta, even though it's in the PC beta, because they knew Caspian Border would suck on the console, which it does, and it would turn people off. So I was on Operation Metro. I remember we pushed the bad guys back into their spawn, and it was stuck at like 7v7, and the enemy really didn't know what was going on, so they were fighting us from the back of their spawns, and it got to the point where I was having to kamikaze into the enemy spawn and try and kill someone before the return to Battlefield 10 seconds was up, and the game killed me automatically. And so I was like, okay, I'm done with this, and I never played it on console ever again. Whereas Call of Duty on the console, as frustrated and filled with toddlers as it is, it gives you what you paid for. It makes everyone angry at some point, but it is very rarely are you genuinely bored. And it is by no standard a better game than Battlefield, but you get what you paid for. Now on PC it's the opposite. The gameplay here is on the PC, and as you can see, it is just as fast-paced as Call of Duty, if not more so. And generally it is faster because it's 32 on 32, you know? It's freaking exhilarating. You have way more options in Battlefield than you do Call of Duty in terms of customization, class setups, gameplay, vehicle combat. And because there's enough players to fill the maps, it is going to be faster than Call of Duty. And it is a better engine. And it has dedicated servers. And way better sounds and arguably better graphics. Battlefield on the PC is an experience unlike any other, and I highly recommend it. It's like you're really there. And look, Call of Duty on the PC is still just Call of Duty, except with way more hackers. And so that is my final judgment. If you're on the Xbox or the PS3, buy Call of Duty because it is a better console game. If you're on the PC, buy Battlefield. And with the next Call of Duty and Battlefield probably coming out next year, this is a choice you're going to have to make in your near future. This is Batman, signing out.